All right, so you sent over some stuff about superintelligence and national security, and yeah, it's pretty interesting stuff. I mean, kind of scary too, to be honest. So, we've got a TechCrunch article here, right?
Yeah.
And it's arguing against a Manhattan Project style approach for AI. It's written by some pretty big names too, like Eric Schmidt, the former Google CEO, and a bunch of others. And then we also have this strategy paper.
Yeah.
Superintelligence Strategy, I think it's called. And Schmidt's on this one too, along with some other, really influential folks in the AI world. I guess what struck me about both of these pieces is, they're not just hyping up AI or fear-mongering, right?
Sure.
They're actually laying out a pretty clear framework for thinking about what superintelligence really means. Like AI that's actually smarter than us, in every way.
Yeah.
And they get into the nitty-gritty of the strategic implications of that, which, gets kind of intense pretty quickly. Like they're talking about AI reshaping the global balance of power, even more than nuclear weapons did back in the day. And they get into some wild stuff.
Yeah.
Like AI-powered super weapons, the idea of something called, get this, mutual assured AI malfunction.
Yeah.
And the need to control access to this technology as if it were enriched uranium or something.
Yeah, it's pretty sobering stuff when you really start to think about it. But I think that's why it's so important that we're talking about this now, while we still have a chance to kind of steer things in the right direction. So, I'm glad we're diving into this.
Yeah, me too. So, okay, let's back up for a second. Why is AI even considered a national security issue in the first place? I mean, is it really on par with nuclear weapons and stuff?
Well, the analogy to nuclear weapons and things like chemical and biological weapons, it's actually more accurate than you might think.
Really?
Yeah, those technologies, AI has this huge potential for both good and bad. Right. I mean, it could help us solve some of the world's biggest problems, but it could also lead to, mass destruction if it falls into the wrong hands, or even if it just, malfunctions in some way that we don't anticipate. So, yeah, it's a pretty stark comparison, but I think it's an important one.
So, okay, but how could AI actually destabilize the world? I mean, give me some specifics. What are we talking about here?
Well, think about it like this. The paper talks about this idea of subnuclear dominance.
Subnuclear dominance, what's that?
So imagine a country develops AI-powered systems that can, project power globally without actually having to use nuclear weapons.
Okay.
Right. So we're talking about things like incredibly precise cyber attacks that could cripple critical infrastructure.
High-powered grids and financial systems and stuff.
Exactly. Or imagine swarms of autonomous drones, all guided by AI, that can carry out missions with a level of speed and lethality that human soldiers just can't match.
So it's not just about robots on the battlefield. We're talking about AI systems that could wage war in completely new and unpredictable ways.
Exactly. And that's not even considering the potential for what they call strategic disruption.
Strategic disruption.
Yeah. So the paper lays out this scenario where AI could basically undermine the whole concept of nuclear deterrence, which has been, the foundation of global stability for decades. Imagine an AI system that can track the location of every nuclear submarine, every mobile missile launcher.
Even the ones that are supposed to be undetectable.
Right, even the ones that are supposed to be completely hidden. Suddenly, that whole idea of mutually assured destruction, which has prevented all-out nuclear war for so long, it doesn't really hold up anymore.
Wow, that's a scary thought.
Yeah.
This idea of a transparent ocean where, nuclear submarines are no longer invisible. I mean, it's kind of terrifying.
It is, right. The nation that achieved that kind of AI-powered surveillance, they would have this unprecedented strategic advantage, potentially giving them the ability to, dictate terms to the rest of the world. And it's not just about nation states either, right? I mean, what about terrorist groups? Could they use AI for their own purposes?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Could they exploit AI to do, God knows what?
Absolutely. One of the most concerning things about AI is that it could, democratize access to these incredibly dangerous capabilities.
Right.
Right? The paper argues that AI could significantly lower the barriers to bioterrorism and cyber warfare, making it easier for, small groups, even individuals,
Right.
to cause widespread harm. And they use this really chilling example. They talk about MAIM Shinrikyo, the group that carried out that sarin gas attack on the Tokyo subway back in the 90s.
Right. Yeah, that was awful.
It was, right. And they did that with relatively limited resources. Imagine what a group like that could do with AI tools at their disposal.
Yeah, doesn't bear thinking about. So it seems like the consequences of all this are pretty far-reaching, right? I mean, it's not just about the military. It's about the economy, politics, and even, existential threats to humanity.
Exactly. And that brings us to one of the most interesting and maybe even a little unsettling concepts in the paper, mutual assured AI malfunction, or MAIM.
MAIM. That sounds ominous. What is that, and why should we care?
Well, it's basically a new kind of deterrence theory for this age of AI. It's like, it's kind of like a twisted version of that whole MAID thing, mutually assured destruction.
Right, from the Cold War?
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
But instead of nuclear warheads, we're talking about AI systems that could, potentially malfunction and cause all kinds of chaos.
So, instead of nukes, we've got rogue AI. But how would that even play out? This whole MAIM thing, I mean, it sounds like a recipe for, global paranoia.
Well, the basic idea is that any country that tries to get too far ahead in AI, especially if they're taking risks that could lead to them losing control of their AI systems, well, they could face sabotage from other countries.
Sabotage, you mean hacking into their AI labs, stealing their research, that kind of thing?
Yeah, exactly. Or even deliberately introducing flaws into their AI models so they malfunction.
Wow.
And it wouldn't just be cyber attacks either. The paper talks about a whole range of possible actions.
Like what?
Well, everything from espionage and covert operations to, disrupt AI development to more overt stuff like cyber attacks that target AI infrastructure, like data centers where AI models are trained. And in extreme cases, they even mention the possibility of kinetic attacks.
Kinetic attacks? You mean actual physical attacks?
Maybe like airstrikes or something against AI facilities. So, it's a pretty serious stuff.
So this MAIM concept is basically saying that we could be heading towards this super tense international environment where everyone's suspicious of each other's AI programs?
Yeah, it definitely has that potential.
Yeah.
But the authors, they make this interesting argument. They say that AI might actually make MAIM a more stable form of deterrence than MADAM was.
Really? Why is that?
Well, think about it. Nuclear weapons, they require huge infrastructure, tons of resources to develop, and they're really hard to sabotage once they're built. But AI systems, they're different. They rely on complex software data, which is a lot more vulnerable to disruption.
But wouldn't countries try to protect their AI stuff? I'm picturing these top secret underground bunkers, filled with supercomputers and guarded by robot dogs or something.
Oh, they would definitely try, right? But the paper argues that even the most advanced security measures, they wouldn't be foolproof. AI systems are just so complex, and developing them involves so many different things, from the research to the training of the models to actually deploying them in the real world. And each step of the way, there's an opportunity for sabotage, whether it's through espionage or cyber attacks, or even just leaking sensitive information to the public.
So even if you've got your AI lab buried under a mountain, someone could still hack into your researchers' computers or leak your algorithms or plant some kind of logic bomb in your code, right?
Yeah. Exactly, yeah. And that's why the authors think that MAIM could actually become this self-enforcing dynamic.
Self-enforcing.
Yeah, because it's so hard to actually secure AI development against determined adversaries. There'd be this huge incentive for countries to not try to get too far ahead, Nobody wants to risk starting this chain reaction of retaliation and sabotage.
Right. So, okay, let's say we end up in this weird AI standoff. Then what? Do we just, sit around freaking out, waiting for someone's AI to go haywire? It doesn't sound very optimistic.
Well, the paper argues that even under MAIM, there are things we can do to manage the risk and maybe even find a way to cooperate more in the future.
Okay, so what are those things? How do we deal with this whole AI deterrence thing without, accidentally blowing ourselves up?
Well, they propose a bunch of different approaches. One is to establish clear escalation ladders, kind of like what they had during the Cold War, to prevent accidental nuclear war.
Right.
So these would be protocols for how countries can respond to suspected AI sabotage without triggering this uncontrolled spiral of retaliation. It'd be like a set of rules for the AI arms race, basically.
Okay, so we need some ground rules to prevent things from getting out of hand.
Exactly. They also emphasize transparency and inspection, making sure that you can tell the difference between legitimate AI research and, activities that could actually threaten global security.
So, letting international inspectors check out each other's AI programs.
Yeah.
But wouldn't that be super difficult? I mean, AI research is often like top secret, right? Countries probably wouldn't want to share their secrets.
Yeah, it'd definitely be tough. But the paper talks about some interesting ideas, like using AI to do the inspections,
AI to inspect AI. That's trippy.
Yeah, right. So these algorithms could verify that countries are complying with safety standards without actually revealing the details of the AI systems themselves.
So it's like having a robot auditor that can check your finances without seeing your actual bank statements.
Exactly. It'd be tough to figure out, but finding that balance between transparency and protecting national security secrets, that's going to be super important in this new AI world.
Right. But even with all that, isn't there always going to be a risk of someone cheating or pushing the boundaries?
There'll always be some risk. But that's where the idea of nonproliferation comes in.
Nonproliferation, like with nuclear weapons.
Exactly. The authors argued that we need to take those same principles and apply them to AI. They focus on three main things: compute security, information security, and AI security itself.
Okay, break those down for me.
Right.
Starting with compute security, what's that all about?
Well, compute security is about controlling access to the actual hardware that powers AI systems, specifically those advanced AI chips that are becoming more powerful all the time.
Right.
They say we should treat those chips like they're highly enriched uranium, subject to strict export controls and security features to make sure they don't end up in the wrong hands.
So, treat AI chips as if they were the most dangerous materials on Earth.
Exactly. They even suggest things like firmware updates that could let AI chips verify their location and disable themselves if they're tampered with or taken somewhere they're not supposed to be.
Like a self-destruct mechanism for AI chips.
Exactly, yeah. Then there's information security.
Okay, what kind of information are we talking about here?
So this is about protecting the knowledge behind AI systems, the stuff that makes them work. We're talking about the algorithms, the training data that shapes how AI systems learn, and these things called model weights.
Model weights. What are those?
Think of them like the connections in a human brain.
Okay.
They represent the patterns and relationships an AI system has learned from its training data. They're what determine how an AI system responds to inputs, makes predictions, basically how it behaves.
So protecting those model weights, it's like protecting the AI's intelligence, right?
Exactly. And preventing them from being stolen or leaked.
Yeah.
That's a huge challenge, especially now that so much research is shared online.
So how do we even do that?
Well, it's going to take a multifaceted approach, right? They propose things like strict background checks for people working on sensitive AI projects, robust cybersecurity for AI companies and research labs, and even international agreements to prevent the sharing of especially dangerous AI knowledge, like anything related to bioweapons.
So it's like traditional security measures, but also a whole new set of rules for AI research.
Right. And then there's the third part, AI security. This is about making sure the AI systems themselves are designed in a way that minimizes the risks of them malfunctioning, getting hacked, or being used for bad stuff.
This is where it starts to sound a bit sci-fi, right? Like, how do you make an AI secure? They're just lines of code, aren't they?
It's complicated, but it's about building in safeguards and testing mechanisms throughout the whole development process. They talk about things like refusal training.
Refusal training.
Yeah, it's where you teach an AI system to automatically reject commands that could cause harm, even if those commands are coming from a human operator.
So like if someone tries to order an AI-controlled drone to attack civilians, the drone would just say no.
Exactly, yeah. Pretty amazing, right? They also talk about things like input-output filtering to stop AI systems from being fed bad data or being used to steal information from other systems.
Why?
And they really push for rigorous testing and evaluation of AI systems before they're used in the real world, especially in high-risk areas like the military or critical infrastructure.
So it's like building in safety features, teaching AI systems to be ethical, and then testing the heck out of them to make sure they don't go rogue.
Exactly, yeah. It's a lot to do, but it's necessary if we want to avoid those worst-case scenarios we were talking about earlier.
Right. But even if we manage all that, even if we get this whole deterrence thing right and stop the spread of dangerous AI, there's still the question of how countries can stay competitive in a world where AI is changing everything.
Yeah, that's a really important point. It's not enough to just stop AI from being used for bad stuff. We also need to figure out how to use it for good, right?
Right, to make our lives better and strengthen our societies.
Exactly. And the paper lays out some really interesting ideas for how to do that. They focus on 4 main areas: military strength, economic strength, creating legal frameworks for AI, and maintaining political stability even with all these rapid changes.
Okay, let's dig into those. Starting with military strength. How does AI change things on the battlefield, and how can countries adapt without starting some crazy arms race?
Well, one of their main points is that AI is already transforming warfare, and it's only going to get more intense.
Right.
They talk about how important autonomous systems are becoming, like drones, which are getting more sophisticated and deadly thanks to AI.
But isn't there a risk that relying too much on those autonomous weapons could lead to problems? Like unintended escalation or even, machines making life or death decisions without humans involved. That sounds pretty scary.
Yeah, it's a valid concern, and the authors acknowledge that. They stress the importance of meaningful human control over AI systems, especially in military operations. We need clear rules of engagement for AI-powered warfare, and humans need to be the ones making the final decisions, especially about using lethal force.
So it's not about replacing soldiers with robots. It's about using AI to make humans better at their jobs, but also making sure things don't spiral out of control.
Exactly. And another key thing for military strength in the AI age is securing supply chains. A lot of countries, even powerful ones, rely on foreign companies for crucial parts of their AI systems, especially those AI chips we talked about earlier.
Right, so if a conflict breaks out, those supply chains could get disrupted, and suddenly you're stuck without the technology you need.
Yeah, it's like running out of ammo in the middle of a battle. So they argue that countries need to invest in making their own AI chips and diversify their suppliers so they're not so dependent on other countries.
Okay, that makes sense. But what about economic strengths? How does AI impact the global economy, and how can countries make sure they don't get left behind?
AI is going to be one of the most transformative technologies ever, with the potential for huge economic growth and increases in productivity.
Right.
But it could also disrupt labor markets and make existing inequalities worse if we're not careful.
So, on one hand, you've got the potential for incredible innovation and wealth.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, you've got the risk of mass unemployment and social unrest if AI starts doing all the jobs.
Exactly. It's a tricky situation, and the authors suggest a few strategies to deal with it. Investing in education and retraining programs so workers can adapt to the new AI-powered economy.
Right.
Policies that encourage entrepreneurship and innovation to create new opportunities for people who might lose their jobs to automation.
So instead of trying to stop technological progress, we need to help people adjust to it.
Exactly. And they also talk about the importance of government investment in things like infrastructure, research, and development to lay the groundwork for AI-driven innovation. Countries that don't do this, they risk falling behind in the global economy.
It's like some countries are going to embrace the AI revolution and reap the benefits, while others are going to cling to the past and get left in the dust.
Yeah, it's a real possibility. But economic strength is only one part of the puzzle. We also need to think about the legal side of AI, how our current laws, which are designed for humans, can be adapted to a world where AI systems are making more and more decisions.
That's an interesting question. How do you hold an AI accountable for its actions? Could you sue an algorithm or put a robot on trial?
Yeah, it's totally uncharted territory, and legal experts are trying to figure it out right now.
Right.
The authors suggest some interesting ideas, like setting up clear legal frameworks for AI agents based on existing legal concepts like duty of care, prohibitions against fraud, and fiduciary duties.
So basically, trying to apply the rules that govern human behavior to AI, even though AI doesn't think or act like humans.
Exactly. We need new ways to hold AI systems accountable for what they do, whether it's by finding companies that deploy harmful AI, requiring them to have insurance to cover potential damages, or even having AI guardians who are legally responsible for the AI they oversee.
So it's like creating a whole new legal system just for AI.
Yeah, it's a huge task, but we can't ignore it. As AI becomes more integrated into our lives, the legal questions are only going to become more important. And then there's the issue of political stability, which might be the toughest challenge of all.
Okay, how does AI affect our societies and how we govern ourselves? I'm guessing it's not all good.
Yeah, it's complicated. AI has the potential to both strengthen and weaken democracy. It could be used to make things more transparent, empower citizens, and fight corruption. Imagine AI systems that can analyze tons of data to find patterns of fraud or abuse of power, or AI platforms that make it easier for people to engage with their governments.
That sounds pretty good.
Yeah, but on the other hand, AI could also be used by authoritarian governments to crack down on dissent, manipulate information, and control people even more.
Right, like the surveillance stuff we were talking about before.
Exactly. And the paper points out a bunch of potential threats to political stability in the AI age, like the spread of misinformation and propaganda, the loss of privacy, and the concentration of power in the hands of a few tech companies or governments who control these technologies.
So again, it's not just about the technology itself, it's about who's using it and what their goals are.
Absolutely. That's why the authors say it's so important to develop ethical guidelines, norms, and regulations for AI, especially when it comes to politics. We need to make sure that AI systems are designed and used in a way that respects democratic values, human rights, and the rule of law.
So we need rules to make sure AI doesn't undermine the foundations of our societies. But how do we even do that? AI is everywhere. It's not like any one country can control it.
Yeah, it's going to take international cooperation and a willingness to work together. They suggest things like international agreements to ban certain types of AI, like autonomous weapon systems that can make life or death decisions without human input.
Okay.
And they also call for more transparency and accountability in how AI is developed and used so that people can understand how these systems work and have a say in how they're used.
That sounds tough, especially when it comes to international cooperation. But it seems like it's essential if we want to avoid some of those dystopian scenarios we've been talking about.
It is tough, but we can't ignore it. The stakes are too high. And even if we deal with the political challenges, there's still the question of how we prepare our societies for the changes AI is going to bring. We've already talked about AI taking over jobs.
Right.
But it's not just that. It could reshape entire industries, create new types of work, and change the way we live and interact with each other in fundamental ways.
Yeah, it's hard to imagine what the world will be like in a few decades with all this happening.
It's a time of huge change, and it's normal to feel both excited and nervous about the future.
Right.
But the authors of the paper are cautiously optimistic. They think that AI has the potential to help us solve some of our biggest problems, like climate change, poverty, and disease. But only if we approach it carefully and understand both its potential and its risks.
So it's not about stopping progress. It's about guiding it in a direction that benefits everyone.
Exactly. And that's a responsibility that we all share, not just governments and tech companies, but everyone who will be impacted by AI.
Okay, so we've covered a lot here. The potential for AI to change the balance of power, the risks of AI going wrong or being sabotaged, the need to control dangerous AI capabilities, and the challenges of adapting our laws and political systems to all of this. What does it all mean? Where do we go from here?
Well, the authors don't give easy answers, but they do give us a way to think about the strategic implications of AI and the choices we face as a society.
Right.
They urge us to move past those simple doomer or utopian narratives about AI.
Like, either AI is going to destroy us all or it's going to solve all our problems.
Exactly, yeah. We need to be more nuanced and pragmatic, understanding both the potential benefits and the risks of this technology.
So it's not about banning AI or blindly embracing it. It's about finding a middle ground.
Yeah, and figuring out how to steer its development and use in a way that helps humanity. And that's going to take careful planning, international cooperation, and a willingness to adapt to a rapidly changing world.
Okay, one last question. If we manage to avoid the worst-case scenarios, if we deal with the risks of AI going wrong, spreading too far, or being used for bad things, what does the future look like? What does a world where AI is a force for good look like?
That's a question we all need to think about. The future of AI isn't set in stone. It depends on the choices we make today, the policies we implement, the investments we prioritize, and the values we uphold.
So it's not just about the technology. It's about who we are and what kind of world we want to live in.
Exactly. And that's maybe the most important insight of all. The future of AI isn't just a technical challenge, it's a human one.
So we've talked about the military and the economic impacts of AI and how our legal systems need to adapt. But what about the impact on our political systems and just like the fabric of our societies? I mean, some people are saying that AI could be a threat to democracy, lead to mass surveillance, or even a world where algorithms are making all the decisions. Are those legitimate concerns?
They're definitely concerns that we need to think about, yeah.
Right.
AI has the potential to be both a really powerful tool for democracy and also a potential threat to it.
Okay.
I mean, think about it. AI could be used to increase transparency, give more power to citizens, and even help fight corruption.
Right.
Like, imagine AI systems that can analyze huge amounts of data to find patterns of fraud or abuse of power. Or AI-powered platforms that make it easier for people to communicate with their governments and hold them accountable.
That sounds good. But couldn't AI also be used by, authoritarian governments to suppress people who disagree with them, manipulate information, and just control society even more tightly. We're already seeing how some countries are using AI for surveillance, and it's not hard to imagine that getting a lot worse.
Yeah, that's a real risk, and it's something we need to watch out for. The paper highlights a bunch of potential threats to political stability in the AI age, including the spread of misinformation and propaganda, the erosion of privacy, and the concentration of power in the hands of just a few tech companies or governments who control these technologies.
Right, so it's not just about the technology itself, it's about who controls it and what they plan to do with it.
Absolutely. And that's why the authors emphasize how important it is to develop ethical guidelines, norms, and regulations for AI, especially when it comes to politics. We need to make sure AI systems are designed and used in a way that respects things like democratic values, human rights, and the rule of law.
Okay, so we need to set some ground rules to make sure that AI doesn't, undermine the very foundations of our societies. But how do we actually do that? I mean, AI is a global thing. It's not something any single country can control.
Yeah, it's going to take international cooperation, dialogue, and a willingness to work together to find solutions that are good for everyone. They propose a few things that countries can do, like setting up international agreements to ban certain types of AI systems, like autonomous weapons that can make life or death decisions without any human involvement.
Okay.
They also advocate for more transparency and accountability in AI development and deployment so people can understand how these systems work and have a voice in how they're used.
It sounds like a huge challenge, especially getting different countries to cooperate. But it seems crucial if we want to avoid those really bad scenarios where AI gets out of control and takes away our freedoms.
It is a big challenge, but we can't just ignore it, right? The stakes are just too high. And even if we manage to solve the political challenges, there's still the question of how we get our societies ready for the economic and social disruptions that AI is probably going to cause. We talked about AI taking jobs,
right?
But it's bigger than that. It could change entire industries, create new types of work, and fundamentally alter how we live and interact with each other.
It's almost impossible to imagine what the world will be like in a few decades with all this happening. I mean, even now, AI is changing everything from how we get around to healthcare to how we entertain ourselves.
Yeah, it's a time of massive change, and it's normal to feel a mix of excitement and worry about what the future holds. But the authors of the paper, they're cautiously optimistic. They believe AI could help us tackle some of humanity's toughest challenges, like climate change, poverty, and disease, but only if we approach it carefully and understand both its potential benefits and its risks.
So it's not about trying to stop progress. It's about steering it in a direction that's good for everyone. It's about shaping the future of AI instead of letting it shape us.
Exactly. And that's a responsibility that we all share, not just governments and tech companies, but citizens, educators, researchers, everyone who will be affected by this technology.
That's a great point to end on. It's a reminder that the future of AI isn't set in stone. We all have a part to play in deciding what it looks like. Well, that wraps up our deep dive into superintelligence and national security. We've covered a lot of complex and interesting ideas, and I hope you found it as engaging as we did. As AI continues to evolve, it's going to be so important to stay informed and involved in the discussions about how we manage this incredibly powerful technology.
Absolutely. The future of AI is too important to leave to chance. We all need to be part of the conversation.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep those brain cells working.